HMS Sheffield was a town-class light cruiser of the Royal Navy, specifically one of the Southampton subclass, which consisted of the first 5 ships of the class to be constructed. She was laid down at the start of 1935, launched in July 1936 and commissioned into the fleet in August 1937. Whilst many ship's fittings are made of brass, this vessel was named after the city of Sheffield, which was famous for its steel industry, and thus many of these fittings were instead equipped with stainless steel versions donated by the city's various industries, a tradition which would carry through to subsequent ships that bore the name, and also made cleaning substantially easier, with glints of shiny steel visible from the external fittings and contributing to a rapidly acquired nickname of Shiny Chef. Once the ship had worked up, it took part in an amphibious assault exercise before finding itself back in the yard, as within a year of commissioning it would be fitted with an experimental air search radar system, one of the first ships in the Royal Navy to have carried such a device operationally, reflecting the lead the British held in this field at the time. As one of the Royal Navy's most modern cruisers, her first war assignment was offensive sweeps and patrols based out of Scapa Flow, with occasional run-ins with the Luftwaffe, as well as a specific hunt for the 2 Scharnhorst class after their assault on a convoy and the sinking of the armed merchant cruiser Rawalpindi. After a brief stint patrolling the Denmark Strait, it was off to Norway, helping the home fleet in its searches for various reported German warships and landing sailors and troops to secure various coastal and island-based targets. Screening of the Ark Royal, a duty that it would return to in time, was followed up by evacuation of some of the same troops as Norway fell to the German advance. Upon her return, she alternated between anti-invasion patrol and further sweeps for German warships and armed merchant cruisers attempting to reach the Atlantic, before being sent to replace HMS Arethusa as part of Force H, the Royal Navy's force holding and operating from Gibraltar. Able to operate equally into the Mediterranean and Atlantic, she would escort the Ark Royal once again, guarding convoys and helping to attack Italian positions during this time, as well as getting involved in the Battle of Cape Spartivento against elements of the Italian fleet. Force H began to take a more offensive stance in 1941, with bombardments and attacks on Italian and Vichy French convoys and bases, as well as providing much of the strength for Malta convoy escorts. During this time, Force H was summoned to try and stop the German battleship Bismarck, with Sheffield first shadowing the Bismarck, then being attacked by both the German ship and Ark Royal's own swordfish by mistake, and then using signal lamps to point the next wave of swordfish in the right direction. She would subsequently locate and destroy 2 of the merchant ships that had originally been sent out to support Bismarck's projected raiding crews, the tanker Friedrich Bremer, which had been retasked to supply U-boats, and the supply ship Kota Penang, which was similarly engaged, before she headed back to the UK. Once back in the home fleet, she would escort a number of Arctic convoys through the punishing Arctic winter before encountering a mine off Iceland in March 1942, which required several months of repairs. After repairs and a few more convoy runs, it was back to Force H's old operational area as part of the support fleet for the Allied landings of Operation Torch, before heading back north again for more convoy escort duties. In this phase of her Arctic missions, she would see her next major action at the Battle of Barents Sea, where she damaged the heavy cruiser Admiral Hipper and sank the destroyer Friedrich Eckholt after the latter drew too close, thinking Sheffield was in fact Hipper. With the crew no doubt feeling a bit like a heavily armed yo-yo, the Sheffield was then moved back south again to support Operation Avalanche, the landings at Salerno against Italian and German forces, before once again ending back up in the Arctic just in time to take part in the Battle of the North Cape, and thus the sinking of the Scharnhorst alongside HMS Belfast and HMS Norfolk, although her participation for the middle third of the engagement was reduced, since splinter damage from Scharnhorst guns had reduced her speed and forced her to play catch-up during the chase that occupied most of the time between the initial gun duel with the cruisers and the final action with Duke of York. Obviously, having developed something of a taste for German capital ships, Sheffield found herself escorting the Royal Navy carrier forces that executed Operation Tungsten, a series of airstrikes that attempted to destroy or cripple the Tirpitz. These were meeting with only relative success, and the decision was taken to level up the size of bomb, and so the job was handed over to the RAF's Lancasters. After taking part in a dummy assault on Norway to distract from the D-Day landings, she was sent to the USA for an extensive refit, which in total would last until after the end of the war, with her transitioning back to UK yards in mid-1945. Post-war, she would rejoin the fleet in mid-1946 and spend the next few years on a circuit between the Caribbean, the Mediterranean and home waters, stopping by the UK in 1953 to be part of a fleet review honouring the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. She was progressively refitted in the 1950s in order to make her more survivable in the face of a nuclear or biological battlefield environment, as well as upgrading her technology. She would also play a marginally convincing role as the Leander-class HMS Ajax, or Ajax, during the film The Battle of the River Plate. She would then be put in reserve in 1959, but came out again a year later before heading back for a period as an accommodation ship. By 1964, she was listed for disposal, but in competition with HMS Belfast to see which ship would be preserved. Ultimately, however, Belfast was in better material shape, and so Sheffield was sent to the scrapyard in 1967.
That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment on the pinned post for dry dock questions.